What if the song that saved them also destroyed them? A label president called Slow Ride too heavy, too long, and refused to release it. The band fought back, won, and watched it go platinum. Then, the machine decided that was all Foghat would ever be. A slide guitar legend walked away from millions just to save his mind. Two versions of the band toured the country in separate vans, fighting through lawyers over songs they wrote together. This is the dark story of Foghat. If you grew up in the mid-1970s, you knew Foghat the way you knew the smell of a summer highway. They came through your dashboard speakers, loud and low and insistent, on those long afternoon drives that seemed to last forever. Slow Ride. Fool for the City. I Just Want to Make Love to You. Songs that felt like they had always existed, like they belonged to the air itself. And then, somewhere in the early 1980s, they were gone. The standard explanation goes something like this. Foghat played a raw, straight-ahead boogie rock that simply could not survive the arrival of punk, disco, and new wave. The cultural tide shifted, and the band did not shift with it. They became a relic, a remnant of an era that had moved on without them. That is the story most people carry. It sounds reasonable. It even sounds a little sad, in the way that most rock endings do. But it is not the real story. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. The truth is that Foghat did not fade because they ran out of ideas or refused to evolve. They were frozen. At the exact moment they were becoming a more complex, more versatile band. The music industry looked at what they had built and decided it was too valuable to change. The corporate machinery that elevated them also caged them, and the songs that millions of fans still love today were, in a very real sense, the bars of that cage. Here is what makes that story so haunting. The band's name itself was born from pure, childlike nonsense. Vocalist Dave Peverett invented the word during a childhood game with his brother, a high-scoring bluff in a game similar to Scrabble that meant absolutely nothing. When they finally told their new label what they were calling themselves, the executives reportedly looked at them as if they had grown a second head. And yet, within a few short years, that invented word would be stamped onto 8 gold records, 1 platinum record, and 1 double platinum record. It would be featured prominently in a generation-defining video game, featured memorably in films like Dazed and Confused, and played on classic rock radio for the next 50 years. That is the gap at the center of this story. Between the childlike freedom of that invented word and the rigid corporate machinery that eventually defined it lies the entire tragedy of Foghat. To understand what the industry did to Foghat, you first have to understand what Foghat actually was before the industry got hold of them. In the late 1960s, Dave Peverett, Roger Earl, and Tony Stevens were members of Savoy Brown, a British blues band run with the iron discipline of its founding guitarist. That guitarist was a purist. He believed in one sound, one direction, one vision. And for musicians with the restless energy of Peverett and Earl, that was a slow suffocation. The break came during a rehearsal lunch break when the bandleader stepped out of the room. The 3 men began jamming on high-tempo rockabilly standards, playing with a spontaneous, joyful looseness that had been strictly forbidden under his watch. When he returned and made clear his disapproval, the decision was already made. Their paths had permanently diverged. They departed in early 1971, recruited a slide guitar virtuoso named Rod Price, and began looking for a way into the industry. Every major label in Britain turned them down. Then a representative for a legendary American music manager heard them play in a tiny London club and arranged a private showcase. The manager stood directly in front of their enormous amplifiers while they played a brutal, deafening 6-song set. When the last chord faded, he looked at them calmly and asked if there was somewhere they could go and eat cheese biscuits. Over tea and biscuits at a hotel across the road, he signed them to his boutique American label. They recorded their debut album in Wales with a well-known producer, and what came out of those sessions was not a simple boogie rock record. It was a band with range. Rockabilly rhythms, traditional acoustic blues, intricate twin guitar harmonies, a sound that was still searching, still discovering itself, still genuinely open to where it might go. Then, I Just Want to Make Love to You hit American FM radio. The song climbed to number 83 on the charts, and the label recognized something they could use. That was the first warning sign. Not failure, but success. The corporate hand did not reach down to punish them. It reached down to help, and in doing so, it quietly began to close around them. By 1974, Foghat had been on the road for 3 years with the kind of relentless schedule that turns young musicians old before their time. They were playing upward of 300 shows a year. The touring circuit was enormous, loud, and unforgiving, and the band was beginning to fray at the edges. They retreated to a remote mountain in Sharon, Vermont, renting a station wagon to haul their equipment up the slope, living in a communal house at the bottom while they worked in a small recording studio. The isolation was the point. Away from the label's expectations and the promoter's demands, they found something rare, genuine, creative freedom. It was in that quiet, unhurried environment that Slow Ride was born. The song began as an instrumental jam in a basement on Long Island, with Dave Peverett eventually layering on lyrics drawn from his deep love of rhythm and blues. Working with engineer and temporary bass player Nick Jameson, who brought a funky, inventive low end to the track, the band shaped it into something that felt completely unlike anything else on rock radio. It was heavy without being aggressive, hypnotic without being boring, and it ran for 8 full minutes. When they brought the master tape to the label, the response was immediate and hostile. The executive who heard it told them flatly it was not a hit. It was too heavy. It was too long. He wanted a slow ballad, something that fit the standard radio format. Roger Earl's response was not diplomatic. The band won that fight. Slow Ride was released, and it became one of the defining rock songs of the decade. The follow-up live album, recorded at a single show in New York, sold over 2 million copies and certified double platinum. Roger Earl bought a Lamborghini with his first royalty check. The dream had arrived, but here is the trap that success built. From the moment Slow Ride became a cultural landmark, the label stopped asking what Foghat wanted to do next. They started telling the band to do it again. Radio programmers locked their playlists around that specific sound. Booking agents built tour packages around that specific image. The band that had once played rockabilly, acoustic blues, and twin guitar improvisations in a Vermont cabin was now officially one thing: boogie rock. That was the product. That was what the market had bought, and that was what the market expected to keep receiving. The cage was beautiful. That was what made it so difficult to see. The mistake the music industry made with Foghat was not one of neglect or indifference. It was a mistake of imagination, or, more precisely, a failure of it. By the late 1970s, American FM radio had undergone a profound transformation. The freeform, disc jockey-driven programming that had given Foghat their early foothold was being systematically replaced by tightly controlled, corporately curated playlists built around a format called album-oriented rock. Programmers were no longer interested in discovery. They were interested in reliability. A band's sound became a brand. A brand could be tested, formatted, and repeated indefinitely with minimal risk. For a label that had built its financial model around Foghat's boogie rock template, any deviation from that sound represented a direct threat. When the band began pushing for new textures, different rhythms, a broader sonic vocabulary, the response from the label was swift and unyielding. They were paired with a high-profile outside producer for their 1978 album, a man whose resume included legendary sessions with some of the greatest names in rock history. The intention was clear: apply external polish, maintain the commercial formula, and suppress any internal push toward artistic evolution. What actually happened in the studio was something else entirely. The producer and the band did not collaborate harmoniously. They fought. The tension between his preference for a heavily compressed, commercially polished sound and the band's instinct for raw, earthy blues rock turned the sessions into an active combat zone. Roger Earl later described the process as deeply difficult. The creative friction bled into every track, and yet, in a bitter irony, that friction produced some of the most ferocious slide guitar work Dave Peverett and Rod Price ever committed to tape. Their cover of a Robert Johnson classic during those sessions captured two musicians using their instruments to vent frustration, anger, and creative desperation in real time. The music was extraordinary, and it changed nothing, because the label did not hear the creative potential in that conflict. It heard the financial risk. Every note that deviated from the Slow Ride blueprint was a liability. The machine did not sabotage Foghat through cruelty. It did something more complete. It perfected them into something they could no longer evolve beyond. By 1979, the weight of what had been built was becoming impossible to carry. Foghat had been touring at a pace that left almost no room for ordinary human life. Roger Earl would later recall coming home from long stretches on the road and watching his own children look at him with expressions of polite uncertainty, as if he were a visitor they vaguely recognized. The road had claimed their families, their health, and slowly their sense of who they were as musicians. In a bid to escape the corporate pressure and reclaim some measure of creative control, the band built their own recording studio. They installed it in a historic Victorian mansion in Port Jefferson, New York, a sprawling old building that became known as the Boogie Hotel. They equipped it with a state-of-the-art mixing console and the finest analog recording equipment available. The idea was simple and deeply human, a place where they could work on their own terms, at their own pace, without a label executive standing over their shoulder. But the freedom of self-production revealed something the constant motion of touring had kept hidden. The band was fractured from within. Their 1979 album, recorded in that custom studio, incorporated brass arrangements, saxophones, and accordion parts that had nothing to do with the sound that had made them famous. Critics were openly dismissive. Fans were confused. Then, Dave Peverett made a more dramatic move. Sensing the seismic arrival of new wave and a fundamental shift in youth culture, he stripped the band's sound down entirely for their next album. Fast tempos, simple arrangements, a bright, almost cheerful aesthetic that bore no resemblance to the heavy, grinding energy of Slow Ride. He was trying to survive. He was trying to find a new lane before the old one closed completely. For Rod Price, that was the final betrayal. Price had fought alongside this band from the beginning. His slide guitar was the voice that gave Foghat its soul. But for years, the relentless touring schedule had been quietly destroying him. He was managing clinical depression with alcohol, performing more than 200 high-energy shows a year, pouring himself into concerts night after night while the ground beneath him slowly gave way. When the music itself began to change, when the blues that had always anchored him was stripped away in favor of something faster and lighter and foreign, there was nothing left to hold on to. Rod Price walked out in late 1980. He did not leave for another band or a solo career. He withdrew from the music industry entirely, almost completely, for nearly a decade. The slide guitar wizard who had defined the Foghat sound simply went silent, and without that voice, something essential in the band went quiet too. The departure of Rod Price did not kill Foghat immediately. It took a few more years for the full collapse to arrive, and those years were painful to watch. The band brought in a new guitarist and kept recording. The albums that followed showed flashes of effort and occasional moments of real craft. But the commercial numbers told the story clearly. Their final album for the label came out in 1983 and barely registered on the charts, peaking at number 192 before disappearing. Shortly after, the label itself folded and ceased operations. The infrastructure that had built them and constrained them was gone. Dave Peverett dissolved the band in 1984 and returned to England. He was exhausted in the deep, bone-level way that only years of relentless touring can produce. He needed silence. He needed distance. But the story did not end cleanly. It rarely does. The name Foghat still had value in the American touring market. Promoters and booking agents knew it. Club owners knew it. and former members began performing under variations of that name to keep working. Initially, they called themselves something else entirely, but promoters refused to book them under anything other than the familiar brand. The name was the ticket. Without it, there were no shows. When Peverett eventually returned to the United States in 1990, he found former bandmates touring under the Foghat name without him. He formed his own competing version. 2 separate groups, 2 separate vans, 2 separate booking agencies, all performing the same songs from the same catalog on opposite sides of the country simultaneously. Former brothers in arms, men who had shared stages and recording studios and long midnight drives across America, were now communicating through lawyers. Tony Stevens, the original bass player who had helped build all of it, found himself in the deeply uncomfortable role of trying to keep the peace between the factions. He later reflected on the tragedy of watching men who had once refused to be separated by a record label, now separated by their own accumulated hurt. The legal battle over the band's trademark name consumed years and cost all of them far more than money. The industry had not just defined Foghat, it had in the end divided them. The rescue came from an unlikely direction. In 1993, a prominent producer who had built his reputation, revitalizing the careers of artists the industry had written off, reached out to the estranged members of Foghat's original lineup. He believed in the raw power of what they had created in the 1970s. He believed it still had resonance. More importantly, he believed in the 4 original members. His planned studio project never fully materialized. But the momentum of his intervention was enough to pull the factions back together. The original lineup reformed. They recorded a reunion album in 1994, featuring new original material alongside traditional blues covers that reminded anyone listening exactly where they had come from. They toured. They played for audiences who had followed them for 2 decades, and for younger fans who had discovered them through films and radio and the kind of organic, word-of-mouth enthusiasm that no marketing campaign can manufacture. Those reunion years were something the band had not experienced in a long time. They were playing together because they wanted to, not because a label was demanding a follow-up to a platinum record. But time had its own agenda. In 1998, Dave Peverett was diagnosed with kidney cancer. He did not stop. He continued performing, continued showing up for the band and for the audiences who had followed them across 3 decades. He played through treatments. He played through the exhaustion and the uncertainty and the quiet knowledge of what was coming. On February 7th, 2000, Dave Peverett passed away in Orlando, Florida. He was 56 years old. Roger Earl had once recalled the night the live album was recorded, a single concert performance that somehow captured everything the band was at their absolute peak. Peverett himself described it with a kind of quiet wonder. He said it was one of those nights when everybody was good, and everybody just peaked. He called it the highlight of his career, the biggest they ever got. That is the final truth of Foghat. They did not fail. They were defined by people who saw their peak and mistook it for a ceiling. They were shaped by a machine that valued predictability over possibility. And they paid a price for that, in years and in freedom, and eventually in the bonds between the people who had built it all together. Foghat's story is not about decline. It is about definition. 4 musicians who escaped one cage only to walk into a larger, more gilded one built by the industry that rewarded their brilliance. They gave everything to the road and to the music, and the machine gave them platinum records and a sound they could never outgrow. The songs remain. The lesson remains too. Some cages are built from failure. The cruelest ones are built from success. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the music that defined your generation.